Don't you think it's about time for a podcast that's more fulfilling? One that's about the vibrant exchange of ideas and perspectives that happens when we actually come together. We got you covered. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project, where the depths of conversation meet the waves of personal experience. This is a real, raw, and unscripted show about everything from leadership lessons to self-awareness, wellness, and the latest current events. We cover it all. We have a rotating cast of guests as we share our personal stories, insights, and opinions on the issues that matter most. Plus, we have a blast while doing it. The Deep Blue Project. It's not just a podcast, it's an experience. And now your host, Chris Workman.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Deep Blue Project. And I know I said I had a holiday special that was going to be the end of the year, but I have a very special guest, and I really don't want to end my episodes on an odd number because it's just not good juju. My wife and I always talk about things. We send messages to each other, and one of the last things we say to each other at the beginning of the day is have no bad juju. So I don't want to have bad juju, so I'm bringing my friend, great guy. We met back in October at IECP. We got to meet in person. He's a great person. I've read his book. Matt Griffin, welcome to the Deep Blue Project, brother.
Oh man, thanks so much for having me, man. And again, what a testimony to just faith and awesomeness. And for those that don't know how we came together, man, it's just another God thing, man. Just like-minded people attract each other. And I saw your post on LinkedIn about heading out to IECP and you just releasing your book. And I don't know why, because I just came back to LinkedIn after about 12 months off of LinkedIn. I lost my dad in January, so I kind of took a break from social media, kind of really focused on me and to circle back to who I wanted to be for 2024. And within a week of me be back on LinkedIn, I saw your post. We had never met before. We had never talked before. We had never seen each other before. And I saw that you're going to be out at LinkedIn. And there's something about you and your book. And I just had a comment. And I said I would love to trade. I'd love to trade a book with you if you would be willing to stop by my booth. And that's how this friendship has blossomed. And man, what a great opportunity it was to meet you at ICP and then look at the friendship that we've developed, man. So blessed, honored, and completely humbled to be here with you. And thank you again for having me.
No, I definitely agree, Matt. I think one of them things that I have found since I started this back in June and coming out with the book is God is great. You just don't understand where that's going to lead you or where your path is going to go or who you're going to meet. And I think we've talked about this and a lot of us have talked about this is we seem to generate those like-minded people that help us continue that path and continue that journey. And I'm going to let Matt kind of tell you a little bit more about himself. His book, The Journey to Midnight, is a fabulous book. I mean, it's a book for me of resilience. It took me some time to read it. There was times that a lot of stuff resonated with me. But it's a great progression of seeing what can happen and what happens to you in your life. And if you don't deal with it correctly, how it can end up. So, I mean, Matt's had a very long and storied career from the Navy to professional service and the first responder. So I'm going to let him talk about that for you and how that kind of came about.
Yeah, man, I do. And again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate just your willingness to continue to do what you're doing. And your book is sitting right here, man. So it's funny. The title of my book is called The Journey to Midnight, and it's even more true today than it ever has been. And the trueness to it is that we all have our midnight. And we all have that day. We all have that month, that week, that second, that minute, whatever the case is, that hour where we would just, where everything just piles up on us. And you look back and you start to think about some of the failures that you've had, and it starts to become overwhelming. And before you know it, you're dug deep into a hole of trauma. And I'm very blessed and man, honestly, just grateful to be here today. Grateful to be above ground and not pushing it up, and grateful to have breath in my lungs. And for every moment that I have a breath in my lungs, I'm gonna tell whoever listens, whether it's one person downloads this or a million, you're not alone. We've all been there. We've all had our midnight, and I'm walking testament, and as are you, Chris, to the fact that we can get to the other side. I think one of the biggest lies that I was ever told was, well, two of the biggest lies I've ever told. Number one is that if you're not strong enough to see it, then this isn't the job for you. And that couldn't be more wrong. And the second biggest lie is that this is all that you're ever going to be good at. And I was locked into being a cop. I was locked into being an undercover cop. I thought what I was doing was great and powerful, and it was. And I'm so proud of my career. But at the end of the day, you have to remember that you're more than just the badge. You're more than being an undercover cop. You're more than what's right here on your heart or what's in your wallet. And, and that's really what the Journey Midnight talks about. It talks about how I was able to get to my midnight. And for those that you don't know, that, the Journey Midnight is my path to write my suicide note on March 17th, 2017, and what that felt like and how it got to that point, how as an 18-year-old kid, I was a big time lacrosse scholarship type kid, and how I went from 18 to my mid 30s with nothing but trauma and depression and PTSD from all the things that we've seen between the military and the police department. And then the second half of the book is how I was able to put my pants back on one leg at a time and stand up every day. And a lot of people are like, oh man, you got it all together now. I really don't. Let's be honest. I really don't. I'm still a very broken person. I still need a lot of help. I still need a lot of support. And I've got a phenomenal community of people around me. Chris, you're a testament to that. And when you put out good energy comes back to you. And the two of us have put out good energy for a while. And we surround ourselves with a group of really like-minded, phenomenal, amazing people. I mean, my Christmas day was pretty phenomenal. I got so many text messages from so many great people that I've interacted with over the last 4 or 5 years of this Journey to Midnight. And just saying, checking on you, man, status check. How you doing? I know holidays are tough. And for a lot of us, holidays are tough. A lot of us have lost people. We look around the table at Christmas dinner and you're wishing that there was other people there. You're wishing that things were a little bit different. But at the end of the day, your journey is exactly where it should be. And, for those that are listening today, I just want you to know that you're blessed, and I'm grateful that you're taking the time to hear us. And yeah, man, I'm grateful to be here. A little bit about me and my background. I grew up in northern New Jersey and went in the Navy out of high school and was a search and rescue swimmer for 4 of my 6 years, and really thought I was going to be a Navy kid for the better part of my life. I was very happy with the Navy, very happy with what I was accomplishing there. And from the Navy into the police department in Virginia Beach, and then Virginia Beach up to the great state of New Hampshire, the live free or die state of New Hampshire, where I'm currently residing, and retired back in 2017 and began, there's a lot of turmoil and a lot of trauma inside of those years the 21 years that I just talked about. And I made a decision to leave law enforcement in 2017 and didn't really know which way was going to be up. Didn't really know, but one of the benefits of being at rock bottom is that there is no place but up to go. And so I knew that it couldn't get any worse. So if I'm miserable, why continue to be miserable? And I say that because, there's a lot of things that happened during that time, and I'm sure we'll dive into a lot of that. But I think the biggest thing for me was as I began to train law enforcement around the country, I did training on undercover operations, basic undercover survival, fentanyl, drug ID, things like that. I always, no matter what presentation it was, I always ended with a story. At the end of the day, you can talk safety all day long for 8 hours, 16 hours, whatever training that you're in. You can talk about like how to keep your foot outside of the car, make sure the car door doesn't slam so you don't go tripping. You can talk about like where to place your undercover, weapon and your off-duty weapon and your second and your backup. You can talk about how to blade your body. You can talk about where the exits are. You can talk about all the safety all day long. But unfortunately, Chris, the number one leading cause of death in law enforcement, unfortunately, is still suicide. Right. And that pains me. And as long as there's a breath in my lung, I'm going to speak out to that. I'm going to speak out that it doesn't have to be that way. And, and I've been so blessed and grateful. And, and I decided that I was going to write down my entire life, in my memoir called The Journey to Midnight. And just, honestly, real talk. Let's, church today, right. It wasn't, I wasn't trying to put it out for 100 people or 1,000 people. I wasn't trying to be a bestseller. I really was writing it down because I love to write. I love poetry. I love the way words sit on a piece of paper after you write them. And there's just something really special about the way that you can take something that's right here in your brain, you can put it on a piece of paper, and you can create the only environment that you need to create. And you can make it seem, say, feel, and you can make these words, have so much more meaning than what you had stuck in your head. And so for me, it was a really healing process to take all the trauma out of my head and put it on the paper, and then watch how, it blossomed for me. And every chapter I wrote somewhere around 10 to 15 times. So I made a promise myself that if I didn't like the chapter, I would read the chapter again. And a lot of times it'd be up on an airplane, or I would be traveling someplace, sitting in a hotel. I'd read the chapter. If I didn't like the message of the chapter, I would delete the entire chapter and start again.
Oh.
No cut and paste, right. I didn't have it separately. So I've written every chapter in this book so many times that I never, until I hit the publish button on Amazon, I didn't read the book all the way through.
Gotcha.
Because you wind up reading every chapter so many times that you're like, oh.
I feel it. I feel you.
But the best part was when I finally sat down, and for anybody listening, it's 278 pages, but you can read it in a couple hours. It really goes quick. And I sat down one night after releasing the book, and I read it start to finish, and I had this amazing epiphany. And here's the epiphany. If what happened in chapter 1 didn't happen, chapter 12 wouldn't be there.
Right.
If what happened in chapter 2 didn't happen, chapter 11 wouldn't be there. Everything happened for a reason. Did the trauma suck? Absolutely, it sucked. Did everything that happened that I went through, did it suck? Absolutely.
Right.
Singularly, if I was to go through individual situations, and you're going to say over the next 21 years, you're going to go through this, this, and this, I would fold like origami.
Right.
But if I knew that I was going through chapter 1 to save my life in chapter 12, it makes a lot more sense now. And so the spiderweb of my book really kind of, for me, was so healing, because I knew that there was an intelligent design behind it. It made sense to me that, okay, the treasure was truly in the trauma, because I allowed it to, and I came out the other side. And that's really kind of my hope for anybody that gets a chance to read The Journey to Midnight, is just know that there's treasure inside of every piece of trauma. Does trauma suck? You're damn right trauma sucks. Mm-hmm. Does suicide suck? Yup. Does divorce suck? Does internal suck? Does shooting suck? It all sucks. And we're not saying that it doesn't. We're not diminishing the fact that it's going to be a hard day. But if you take a little bit of time and take a look at the trauma and some of the wisdom that you gain from it, and some of the perspective that you get on life from that, you're going to be a far better, more well-rounded, amazing person at the end of that. And that's what I really learned. I look at every single obstacle that's in my path today as an opportunity. And that shift in my perspective has changed my whole life. Real talk. If somebody says to me, hey dude, like, I love your beard, but I wish it was a little bit straighter. And matter of fact, I've got a beard like that and I can't get it straight. I look at them like opportunity.
Yeah.
Your obstacle is an opportunity. My obstacle is an opportunity.
Right.
And every time and whether it's a business venture or whether it's just the opportunity for me to say, hey man, I feel you and I got you. That's really, to me, what the Journey of Midnight is. And that's what the 10%ers are all about. And that's, we care and we want you to know that we love you and that we're here. And your obstacle is an opportunity for me to be part of your life and to let you know that it's okay. And it's okay to not be okay, but it's just not okay to stay that way. And let's continue building a community of people that are just like us, man,
I think I agree with you. It's funny that people that when you think about writing a book, okay, like, as people now ask me, like, well, how did you start to write a book? I don't know. I kind of just started. I can't give you an answer to that, because I kind of got to a point where I felt like I needed to do something to get this out of me and get it into somewhere where I could actually plausibly look at it, because I could think about it every single day and do what I need to do every day. But what can I do? Because other shit's not working. What is it? Where's the wall? Like, what can I do? And I actually had started reading. I mean, I hated reading, I couldn't stand reading. Unless it was something that I needed to do for work, which I would do, like policies and procedures and going over stuff and email. like sitting and literally reading a book was not something. It was kind of just lost on years of doing this job. And when I started kind of listening to others and seeing what was out there, and hearing the individuals talk about the things that we have now put in our books and we've gone through, those things started more resonating with me than anything else. And that's where I get your point with the book. Until you write it down, you're looking at it going, like, I didn't realize at the time, like, how that started and ended with this, how that started and ended with this.
Yeah.
And how we got there, and to look at it and go between, whether it's Silence Behind the Blue Wall, whether it's The Journey to Midnight. I mean, we they all, I don't want to say are the same, but they're not the same, but they're similar. And those things, that why I do the Deep Blue Project, and why I and have this connection with yourself, Matt, and with others who are in this space, is that we can do better so people don't have. Now, they're always going to have chapter 1 or chapter 2, but maybe they're not waiting till chapter 12 to handle that situation, like we had to. And I think that's what we look at, and that's the message that we try to put forth. One of the things that my friend Matt and I and some of the others talk about, and I know you talk about it, is you have to first have that courage yourself to want to face that position. We don't want you to get to that point where you're on your journey to midnight. We don't want to get you to a point where you're walking around in your driveway wondering what you're going to do next, and if this is going to be the last day you're on this earth. I mean, we know you're going there's plenty of us and plenty of you out there that are going to get there. We're just hoping that you don't end there. And that's what this message is. That's what these books are. That's why we tell you we're here. Send us a message. Give us a comment. Reach out and say hello. Walk up to us at a conference if you see us. Walk up to us anywhere. Like, I don't care. I'll have that conversation with you for hours if I need to. Yeah. That's where we're at. And that's what that message constantly has to be.
And we're not afraid to cry with you. Look, like, we're also not afraid to go outside and punch you in the face if we need to. But we're also not afraid to cry with you.
Don't get us wrong now. Don't get us wrong.
Right. Don't misconfuse the point. But we're and that's the shift that we're trying to have in law enforcement. Right. I mean, you said it beautifully. And, at the end of the day, I think that words have such a power to them. Sometimes we think about the things that are in our head, and it creates this life, right? Like, our world is so terrible right now with whatever we're going through and whatever we're stuck in. And then all of a sudden I start to, it's the old adage, right? Like, if you're overwhelmed with all the things that you need to get done for the course of the day, what does everybody tell you to do? Write a list. Right. It's the same philosophy. When you write a list and you start checking things off, and you get done with your list, all of a sudden you're like, man, I feel great. Everybody can relate to that. It's the same thing with your story. Not everybody has to publish a book, but maybe you just need 5 minutes. And I talk a lot about this. And again, I have the Triple H message between hope, health, and habits, and have a person or have a journal. If you don't feel comfortable sharing the innermost details of your life, and the things that you're scared about, and the things that you're insecure about, and things that you're nervous about, write it down. I call it writing dirty, like the Ludacris song. And just shut down, put your phone on Do Not Disturb for a hot minute, and just take out a pen and paper. And again, for anybody that doesn't know how to start writing, this is how you start writing. Shut down electronics for a second. Take 5 minutes. That's it. Take 5 minutes of your day. Take out a piece of pad, like right here. Take out a piece of pad. Sit down. And then write any word that comes to your head. You don't have to write a sentence. You don't have to write poetry. You don't have to try and rhyme. Just close out everything else, and the words that come to your head, that's what you put on a piece of paper. Before you know it, there's gonna be smoke coming out from your pen, from pencil, and it's an amazing transformative type of therapy. And I learned it going through therapy. I really did. At nighttime, a lot of people talk about journaling at nighttime, talking about the things that you're going through, the things. So I journal in a certain way. I know the things that I want to accomplish the next day. And so I set myself up to have a good day where I don't wake up and I feel overwhelmed. And to me, that's my version of the journal. And a lot of people are like, the same thing. How did you start to write a book? I started this book when I was in high school. And for me, it was just a natural transition. I've always loved to write. I've loved it. And all of us can do it. I promise you. It may not have to be a 278-page book. It may just have to be a poem. It may just be one chapter of what you're, but just like Chris said, we don't want you to get to chapter 11 or 12. We don't want you to get to the point where you have to hit the publish button on a book for where you wrote your suicide note. We want you to know that the conversation is normalized today.
Right.
It's okay to talk about trauma, PTSD. It's okay to talk about suicide. It's okay to cry. It's okay to help. It's okay to love. It's okay to ask somebody, hey, man, I feel like you're not doing good, dude. I just don't want to make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself. It's okay to say that. You're not going to prompt them, not going to push them into doing anything that they're not already thinking about doing.
Right.
And if we can start to normalize that conversation with podcasts like this and conversations of what we're going to, accomplish today by people listening to this, that's how we start getting better. Because if we don't normalize the conversation, our younger badges are going to follow the same footprint and the same path that we found.
Yeah, we don't have, and we say this a lot, and we say it all the time, like, we're not trying to give you a cure-all. There's no cure-all. And Matt hit it great earlier. Like, this is an every single day process. It's an everyday process, and it has a commitment. It has a commitment like exercise is a commitment. You're not going to stop having bad times. You're not going to stop having issues, having trauma in your life, especially if you're still doing this job. Like, that's just a given. My biggest problem for a very long time was I was so very good at handling other people's problems, I couldn't handle my own. I didn't want to handle my own because I spent so much time dealing with the problems of other people every day for 20 plus years that I didn't want to do that when I was at home. So you would come home and shut down, or you didn't want to talk about it, and it was causing problems at home. Like, we all know where all this comes from. Yeah. But why? This is the time that people like us can sit here and go, it's okay to talk about it. Like, you really need to find an outlet for that, because there's too many of us dying out there because they're not finding a way, or people are not giving them hope, or people are not making them know that it's okay to get help, to reach out for help. Because when you hit that wall, trust me, when you're walking around with that last point in your brain, like, if I end this today, will it all go away? It might go away from you, but the trauma for everybody else is going to continue. So your family needs you. Your family wants you there. I think Matt puts it so eloquently in his book. I mean, with his children and with his family, he had a idea of doing this, but he had an idea of doing this so his kids and his family wasn't involved in it. And Matt, I mean, that's a point also where I had to really step back, because I kind of saw that and felt that. And we don't want others to feel that. That's why we get to that point. Like, I think that I can only speak for myself, that I'm like, I don't want to cause the hurt anymore.
Sure.
It wasn't necessarily me wanting to be hurt anymore. I didn't want to cause the hurt anymore. I felt I was causing more hurt than need be.
Let me clue in the audience too, man. This is a very common misconception inside of suicide and suicidal awareness and suicidal ideation. And so, as a type A type of personality, between the Navy, between being a SAR swimmer, between the police department, and everything else, my whole life was a sacrifice. Everything that I've done and chose, and I enjoyed that sacrifice. I don't say that in a bad way. I enjoyed sacrifice. I enjoyed the Navy. I enjoyed the undercover world and the police department and everything else that I did. However, when the trauma started to really kind of situate and really kind of fester inside me, and again, we can kind of talk a little bit about it, but after Brian committed suicide, and what I saw and what I felt was that it wasn't suicide, because my entire life, everybody had said suicide is so weak, it's so weak, it's so weak, it's so weak. How could you do that? How could you take your own life? And what happened was the transition from the weakness of what suicide is to the sacrifice. So it wasn't suicide anymore, it became a sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't committing suicide to be weak for myself. I was committing suicide because I wanted to take myself out of the game and be a better father for my children. Now, I know that sounds completely contradictory to what it is, but at that time, that's what my brain and the trauma and the depression was telling me, was that you have to be strong for your children and you have to take yourself out of this game. And taking myself out of the game as a sacrifice was ending my life so my children didn't have to. But that was the lie that was being, my brain was feeding me from the depression.
Right.
And so again, like for one of the things that I talk a lot about is trying to understand where that kind of lies inside of all of our brothers and sisters in blue and our first responders, military, police, and our culture. And so understanding that type of bravado and everything else and those catastrophic failures. And Chris really kind of hit the nail on the head by saying a lot of times, and it's been a very common factor, is again, we're trained to deal with everything that happens at work. We know that there's going to be some pretty bad days, some shitty days at work. But when the temple falls apart, when our home life falls apart, the divorce, the arguing at home, the alcohol, the extramarital affairs, everything else that comes along with all of the drama and the trauma that we sustain at work, we're looking for ways to offset that trauma at home. And when the home life starts to fall apart, that's when it's truly a sinking ship. And that's, for anybody that listens, that's where I really want the intervention time to start. And again, if we can normalize the conversation, and what I mean by normalizing the conversation is inside of 72 hours, our younger badges are going to make a decision when they go to a fatal accident scene, when they go to a traumatic situation. And if we can just let them know that there's resources available to, there's a major disconnect between resources available and cops not using those resources. And so how do we bridge that gap, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head. Being able to just have our older badges, have our veterans, have our older guys be able to say, hey, look, like you don't need to tell me how you're feeling. You don't need to cry to me. If you want to, I'm here for you. However, here's the resources that are available for you. And I want to let you know that I use those resources. And it's been one of the best things that I've ever done. If I never found EMDR, I don't think I would be sitting here today.
Right.
So,
well, I think that goes back to one of the keys that we tell people, and that's one of our hardest part is the veterans. Some of our hardest part is getting that through to the grizzled, gray-haired, salty guys who are out there who have been doing this job for years. Who got that gruffled, I dealt with it, I'm good with it. Yep. Well, sooner or later, like I get that we put a lot into our careers, but we're human beings when it comes down to the end of it. And not having that human interaction and not having that love from your family and the people that are close to you, like we pushed all that aside. I did that. I mean, that was for me, if I go back and look at the things between what changes now as opposed to what it was before, is I'm more and more in tune to what's going on in my home and my family life than I ever was in 20-some, 30-some years of being a first responder and 20-some years of being a cop. I am more responsible to the things that I need to take care of at home. I'm more responsible to my family life. I'm more responsible to my own personal health and wellness than I ever was before. I think our hardest part right now is trying to get those people who are at that time of their career where I'm at and where we're at to be that person, to give them that permission, so to speak. And that's what we've talked about a lot, is giving them that permission from the top to say, look, you're good, man. You can take time for yourself. You need to take time for yourself. One of the things that I seem to be leaning to, or people keep asking me to talk about now in the coming year, is they wanted me to focus on how this part of our book, do I teach this cleaning out your mental closet? So, it seems like things go to your niche or where you want to, and that seems to be what people keep asking me about. And that's the first part of that is, one, you have to look inside yourself, and you have to look inside yourself and go, like, these issues were my problem. Nobody else around me caused this. I caused this by either putting it away, by not addressing it, by letting it sit there and fester, and learning. And it's still hard, and I'm still doing it. And this is not an overnight thing. It's not something that's going to change that quickly. But you have to have a beginning point to start looking at these things and go, you have to address them, and you have to put them away, and you have to forgive yourself, and you have to move on. And I think that's the key. And giving these other individuals that permission to start doing that is where they become that mentor for the younger badges to go, hey, if these guys are doing it and they're not telling me to sit down, shut up, and suck it up, then I'm learning better. Then I'm able to not get to chapter 12. I think that's going to be our, our thing for for this podcast. It's then they feel, and they do it so much better than us. Let me get this correct, because we interview people now or talk to kids now, or you see the generation now, like, we complain sometimes as leaders that go, "Oh, they don't want to stick around. They don't want to work the overtime. They don't want to do this." You know why? I don't think it's not because they don't want to do it. It's because they want to have a balance.
Do you blame them?
No.
I mean, we're losing 1 to 5 year police officers at a record rate across the country, and I can't blame them. And again, from a mind shift point of or perspective, as a leader, as a thought leader in law enforcement, as a chief of police, I'm not, but from a chief of police perspective, I don't blame them. They show up to work every day for 1 to 5 years, and they look around at the older guys that are absolutely miserable in their life. And everybody's told them, hey, in 20 years, you're going to get this beautiful pension that you can kind of ride off into the sunset, and you're going to be able to get everything but then they look around for the next 1 to 5 years and they say, well, is anybody really enjoying their pension? Has anybody really ridden off into the sunset and finding the Quan, like in
Right.
Jerry Maguire? Nobody,
Right.
They're not doing that. So it's again, it feels like a lie to them. And so, the honest to God question is, I think that we have to do a better job taking care of them. And if our older badges don't pave the way and clear the path to normalize the conversation around mental health. And again, a study came out, and I think this is really telling. The study came out of, we're all fishing in the same pool for applicants. Every one of us, right? The applicant pool is tiny. There's only a couple of fish in that pond, and they're going to be qualified cops. Used to be thousands of fish, thousands of ponds. Now it's not so much anymore. We only have a couple fish in that pond. And so the couple of fish in that pond, they said, well, what, an interview was done or a study was done. What are the top 3 things that you are looking for? Because there's a buyer's market for these younger badges.
Mm-hmm.
And what wasn't in the top 3? Pay.
Right.
And when asked about that, they said, look, 75 grand as opposed to 70 grand, who gives a shit? We're talking a couple $100 in a paycheck. I'll go get a detail if I want to.
Right.
And what was in the top 3 was, how are you going to take care of me? How are you going to take care of me? And I just read another study today, or I read another article today. A buddy of mine had to take somebody's life, and the 4 years of legal trouble that he had to go through for to take somebody's life.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it took his career. He retired after it was over. And again, the question begs you, if my son, I've got a 21-year-old son who's at college, and if he comes out of college and says, Dad, I want to be a police officer, and this is the city that I want to be a police officer in. If you don't think, Chris, if you're the police chief in that town, that I'm not going to have a phone call with you and say, hey, how are you going to take care of my son if my son decides that he needs to pull the trigger and take somebody's life? How are you going to take care of my son when he sees a fatal traffic accident for the first time? And if the answer isn't there, I'm not letting my son go. And that's, I think, a major piece of the puzzle when we try to move forward into 2025, into recruiting and into retention and everything else. But man, like, you're absolutely right. They're looking around and they're not dumb.
No, they're not.
Why am I doing this? Right. And again, there's a reason that we're paramilitary. So the military did a study way back. And I know this like 3 times I've mentioned a study.
No,
I do
a lot of reading.
I do a lot of reading. And I firmly believe readers are leaders.
Right.
The more knowledge I can get, I'm a lifelong learner. And there's a study done way back, and it said, from a military perspective, we cannot have the citizens of our country endure this type of trauma for more than 20 years. And that's why the military says 20 years, you're done.
Right.
20 years and you're medical with the VA and pension. And at 38 years old, you can be retired from the military. And it's not like, hey, we're doing this for you, but they are. They're doing it because you can't sustain that type of lifestyle for what they said. Now we have 25 years, 30 years. We have guys. I met a guy the other day at a conference, and he is in his 42nd year of law enforcement. I said, at what point do you begin to enjoy the benefits of the sacrifices that you've made for 42 years?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, what do you mean, Matt? I said, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. And I'm very proud of, I'm honored to talk to you and the sacrifice that you've given. But man, you deserve every second of retirement. But the problem is that we have to be able to identify with Matt Griffin and Chris Workman.
Mm-hmm.
And if Matt Griffin and Chris Workman are only part of the badge and only part of what we're doing, and the only sort part of value that we found or find is through the radio transmission with the 911 call, then at the end of the day, you're not going to retire, because Matt Griffin and Chris Workman were tied to that badge and to that identity.
Right.
And everybody knows that. But the problem is that the life expectancy after a 25-year career is 18 months. So again, we're losing here. Like let's if it's a battle against us and government to pay our pensions, we're losing.
Yes.
Yeah. If our life expectancy after a 25-year career is 18 months, they're paying a pension for 18 months when we sacrifice 25 years for that. Right. Why does that make sense, guys?
It doesn't. Makes no sense at all. I think we have that problem of so I've had conversations and I'm closer to the end than the beginning as I was. I'm very lucky. I am very lucky. I enjoy where I work. I enjoy the people that work with me, and I don't say for me, they work with me. And the things that we've accomplished and the things that we're still trying to accomplish. And one of those things is trying to change that narrative, even for a small department, to see if that goes somewhere. But ultimately, you're right. We work for that. Why do we stay? We work for that pension. That's something that we fight for because we've put all this hard blood, sweat, and tears. We've sacrificed our families. We've sacrificed all these things. And what do we get out of it? Well, we might get a $1,000 a month pension if you're depending on where you're working for and how little you're working for. You're not getting rich in this job, people. I don't give a shit what you think out there. I don't care how much they raise the salaries in other departments. You're paying a toll. They are paying you for your life. That's what they're paying you for, because this takes a toll on you. But ultimately, I say, I got 3 more years left, and God, willing, I get them 3 years. But I'm done. And I have individuals who, have retired years ago who've done this job for they look at me and go, well, yeah, we'll see. I'm like, no, I can literally tell you I'm done. When I reach that pinnacle, when I reach that spot, I'm done. And I'm done because I want to have some semblance of whatever time I have left. And luckily, I've reached this space in my life where I think I'm starting to buy back years. That's what I'm calling what I'm doing right now. I'm buying back the years of that 18 months that they talk about. My shift in my mindset and my hope to shift the mindset of other individuals because of the trauma that takes place on you during this job is the earlier that you make that shift, the earlier you buy back time, the earlier you get more time back.
Yeah. And brother, let me be clear for everybody out there. You're a guardian of the badge. What you're doing now is you're being a guardian. Like we came on the job, protect and serve. We're going out and serving our communities. Now you're in a position where you're serving everybody else that's protecting and serving. So you're a guardian of the badge, which is a phenomenal aspect to what you're doing. And my only pushback on that would be, to anybody listening, it doesn't have to be 3 years. If tomorrow you make the decision that you've had enough, let it be enough.
Right.
Let it be enough. All I'm saying is that when the time comes, you're going to know the time is right. And when that time is right, don't fight it. Don't fight it. I promise you, I slept in my car for 7 days. I was homeless. I had nothing. If you put your mind to it, you're going to succeed. You're going to. I promise you. There's a lot of things out there that nobody told me were out there. There's a lot of different jobs out there. There's a lot of different ways to make money. There's a lot of different resources available for military, police officers. And again, from the end of the day, think about from a work source perspective. You have endured X number of years. You are structured. You're disciplined. And again, give me a shout. I'll walk you through what I learned and where to apply and how to apply and what the job market looks like for former police officers and where I think we fit in the best and where I don't think we fit in the best. I mean, I'm on the other side of that. I'm in sales now, right? Like I have a quota every single quarter, and I'll tell you that is not where former law enforcement should be. But anyway, I mean, I love what I do. It's a grind every single day, but
people still think we have a quota too, but we do not.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah.
I
But
think
again,
that
you have a responsibility. My older badges, they have a responsibility to protect the badge.
yes,
And we haven't done that. And again, I take full responsibility for a lot of that. And I know a lot of my older guys, my old badges, we take responsibility. We didn't protect the badge.
right.
We allow community to get to a point where this job isn't something that people want to do anymore. And we got to take that back, and we got to get the pendulum going the other way. But it starts with our 1 to 5 and our older badges. You got to protect those 1 to 5s.
Right. No, that's a perfect thing to say. And see, this is why I enjoy the podcast. I enjoy speaking to people like yourself, Matt, and I enjoy continuing to have this conversation, because when you get the perspective of others and what they think and what they read and what they see, because there's no way for us to possibly do everything but as a group of people, as a bunch of people who are committed to the same thing. Wow, you can move mountains, because a group can move mountains if they and I think that I am so grateful since that I have decided to embark on this, and I have decided to put my ego aside, and I decided to look into myself and go, you're the dumbass who did what you did, and you need to own up to it, and you need to deal with it. But it doesn't mean it has to stop there. It means you can now go out there and tell people what your story is. Now, you can listen to my story and you can not care, and that's okay. But you can listen to Matt's story and you may resonate with you, or you can listen to John's story, you can listen to Mike's story, or whoever. But these people putting this out there are not putting this out there because they're trying to gain any kind of recognition from it. They're telling you because they care about you. They're telling you because they want you to see these people that are being vulnerable, who didn't take that action when they were younger, saying, now, look, I know I'm doing this now, but it's not too late for you. It's not, and it's still not too late for me, because I got much ahead of me, because my life has changed drastically in 6 months. And I love that feeling, and I'm going to continue to have that feeling and do what makes it feel right. This ain't a position I planned on being in. And Matt and I had this short conversation before we got on. Like, I never knew this is where I was going to be. I didn't know that on December 27th at 9:49 a.m., I'd be sitting here talking with a new good friend and brother, Matt Griffin, about what we're talking about. Like, I didn't know that. He didn't know that. Like, we're where we need to be when we need to be there. And we're hoping that every time that we do this, that it does resonate with that person or one person, or that you hear this and you pick up the phone. And if someone reaches out and says something and asks me a question, I've been on the phone for hours. I've been on the phone for 5 minutes. So having that communication, I wish that I was able to do that before I got where I got. And that was my fault. That was me. That was my ego. That was my personal thought. That was me trying to think that all those times of people telling me I needed to be strong and you can't show weakness and you can't do this and you can't do that. I got news for you. Look, personally, I was a mess. I was screwed up. I did shit in my life that, you know what? It ruined my family. It ruined my relationships. It ruined my life. That I had to rebuild with my son and with other people in my life, because the job became all it ever was, and that had to stop. This job is a noble job. It is a fantastic profession. I love my job every day. When I get to the point where I don't, I will do what Matt said, and I will gratefully walk away. But I still love my job, and I love what I do. However, my job no longer controls me. And you can't let this job control you.
Yep. Yep, that's a great point, man. That's a great point. And I think, like, we only got a couple minutes left, but I think that hit the nail on the head with this job. And because we look at it in a certain way. And I think, for those that you get a chance to read my book, I wrote my suicide note on March 17th, 2017. And I sat in my Yukon and I was going to end my life. And if it were not for a phone call from one of my best friends, I wouldn't be on this podcast and I wouldn't be here today. I was fully committed to what I was going to accomplish on March 17th. And I was going to commit suicide at midnight. And I had my phone on Do Not Disturb. And my buddy Ben called me twice inside of a minute. And I didn't know in 2017, if you called twice inside of a minute, it would break through the do not disturb. And it shocked me. I picked up the phone. He said, "Hey, dude, I've been trying to get a hold of you." And I said, "Yeah, no, I'm good. He said, "Why don't you come over and have a beer?" And I said, "I got something I got to take care of tonight. How about tomorrow?" And he said, "Griff, before I let you go, I want to tell you two things. And I'm going to tell you guys those same two things. Anybody that's listening, I'm going to tell you those same two things." He said, "Griff, number one, I want to tell you that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And number two, I want to tell you that I love you. And I know you're going through some hard shit right now, but I want you to know that I'm going to stand with you. And anything that you need from me, I'm going to be there." And the hopelessness that I had in that moment faded away because I knew that I had somebody that was ready to kick a door and stand right next to me. And I made the best decision of my life on March 17th, 2017. I said, if today's a good day to die, so is tomorrow. And I went over and I had a beer with my buddy. We played some Madden. We laughed. We joked. And then on March 18th, I made the same decision. I said, if today's a good day to die, so is tomorrow. And I kept pushing the decision off a day and a day and a day and a day. And again, what I realized very quickly is that that mantra for me has paid me so many dividends. Now, if you're struggling and if you're listening to this podcast and you're deciding on whether or not today's going to be the day, or if you're going down that path, what I want to tell you is that I took that mantra and I turned that mantra into every day doing something good for myself. So every day I wake up, I do some push-ups, I read a book, I start a project, I'd have some hope for the next day. I would book a vacation that I knew I couldn't pay for, but it was 100% refundable if I didn't have it. I had hope. And then I changed that mantra to the mantra that I live in every day. And so if you're struggling, I promise you, if you take that roadmap, I promise you it's going to pay you dividends. Promise you. And the last part of that roadmap is where I'm at today. Every day I wake up and I find an opportunity inside of every 24-hour block that I'm blessed to be alive to do something nice for somebody else. And it's got to be extraordinary. It's got to be something that I wouldn't normally do. It's buying a coffee for the car behind me. It's telling somebody that I really like that shirt, man. It's being on LinkedIn and saying, you know what? That's a dude that I want to meet and I want a copy of his book, and look what comes from it. And so if you're hearing me out there, man, think about that roadmap. If you're struggling today, I want you to start by saying, today's not my day. Maybe it is tomorrow. And when you get to tomorrow, I want you to say one more day. And then when you're ready to turn that mantra into start putting your pants back on one leg at a time, start by doing something good for yourself every single day. Just could be one thing. And if you get to bed at night and you don't do something good and you can't think of something, roll your fat ass out of bed and do some push-ups. That's what I did. And I know that doesn't, maybe suffice for everybody, but it was something good that I did. And then live in that. I'm telling you, the most selfish thing I do every single day is to do something good for somebody else. Man, because I'm here to tell you that it is phenomenal the way people look at you when you just do something, a random act of kindness for them. It's just awesome, man. And I think that's we get more of that. We start building guardians of the badge. You hit a certain year and you become a guardian of the badge, or what we call a checkpoint program, right? You become a guardian of the badge and you're able to take care of your younger badges as they're going through the thick and thin of it. Because again, those 1 to 5s, they're going to be on midnights. They're going to be on evening shift. They're going to be working the weekends. They're going to be flying to those hot calls. You become a guardian of the badge. We're going to bring this pendulum back. We're going to bring this profession back to the limelight that it deserves. And I know the two of us won't stop, man, until that happens.
Matt, I can't add any more to that, man. I thank you, my brother. I appreciate you being here on the Deep Blue Project. I appreciate you being my brother. And I love Absolutely. You, man. And anything love you ever need, you know that I'm here, and I know you're there for me. So I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to wish you all a happy new year, a happy 2025. Please just do things. Make sure you take care of yourself. Take care of yourself and your family. Everything else will work itself out. So, Matt, you take care of my brother. I'm sure we'll be talking somewhere down the line. And
thank you for having me, bro.
You all have a great day.
You've been listening to the Deep Blue Project. As a father, husband, friend, and someone who loves to chat about anything and everything, Chris brings over 3 decades of public service experience to the table. With a background in firefighting and law enforcement, along with degrees in criminal justice and behavioral science, he's seen it all, and he's learned a thing or two along the way. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on LinkedIn and X at Deep Blue Project. Find our website at deepblueproject.com, and to reach out, send an email to deepblueproject@outlook.com. Keep keeping it real, and we'll see you next time on the Deep Blue Project.